subscribe and click the bell icon to turn on notifications.
Hey there, it's Cindy. Welcome back to QuickBooks 2021. You know, one of the things you can do in QuickBooks is you can take an estimate and create invoices based on that estimate. You're going to be able to create an invoice for a percentage of what's on the estimate, maybe the entire thing. It's just up to you what you'd like to pull onto an estimate. Let's go ahead and take a peek at how to invoice from estimates. This is part 1. There is part 2. Make sure you watch both parts. Now that you've created an estimate, you can turn that estimate into an invoice. Estimates are considered non-posting. Just like purchase orders, that means they will not show up on your reports unless you run specific reports for estimates or purchase orders. If you're following the flowchart, you'll notice the next thing is to create an invoice. We're going to create an invoice based on our estimate. In order to do that, the first thing the invoice wants to know is who's the customer and the job. You want to make sure you pick the exact same customer and job that you have on your estimate. If you don't, this window here will not appear. Typically, if this doesn't appear, what you want to look for is go back to your estimate and make sure you have the same customer and job, because a lot of times it's different on the estimate versus the invoice here. The other thing is sometimes QuickBooks is a little finicky. If you get out of it and come back in, it'll usually work that next time. This is a list of all of the estimates that I've not yet pulled everything from. These are estimates for this specific customer and job. Even if you have a penny left on the estimate, this will still appear. I'm going to click on the estimate I'd like to pull from and then click OK. Here's my progress invoicing. If this window does not pop up, go back to your preferences and check that you turn this option on. You've got a couple of options here. The first one is you can create an invoice for the entire estimate, 100% of it. The second option lets you put in a percentage that you'd like to pull. And the third one lets you pick selected items or different percentages of each item. Let me just quickly show you this last option. I'm going to click OK here. Here's each item that's on my estimate. And if I wanted to invoice for a particular quantity, I could come over here and say 5 of these and 1 of these. Or it could go in and put in some different percentages. And then when I'm finished, I just click OK and it will pull that information in. But I just want to do a flat 30%, so I'll cancel this and I'll have to clear at the bottom and then go back and pull in my customer and job again. Now I'll pick my estimate and click OK. When you're typing in the percentage in the second option, you do not need to type the percent sign, even though it's okay if you do. I'm going to click OK, and now it's pulled in 30% of the quantity of the items that were on my estimate. Let's start at the top and we'll work our way down. We've got our customer and job. Here's the class that it pulled from our estimate. And here are my invoice templates. You'll learn later how to actually create your own. For now, we'll use the Rockcastle invoice template that's here. Here's the date of the invoice. I'm going to go ahead and date it for January 2nd. And then it has the invoice number. Your first invoice will start with number 1. You can put in any number you'd like and it will number sequentially. If your invoice numbers include letters from the alphabet, go ahead and put that in as well and it will work just fine. Here's your billing address it brought in from your estimate, and if you need to add a ship to, you can. Right underneath that, you have your terms and your due date. And of course, if you need to change those, feel free. Now here are the different items from the estimate, and you can see it pulled in 30% of the quantity. If you want to add something to this, you just click on the next line down and add. Let's say it's a delivery charge. And we want to charge one of these at $25. You can see you can add as many items as you like to this invoice and it does not affect your estimate. At the bottom left, you can put in a message for your customer, and there's also a place for a memo at the bottom. And on the right at the bottom, it shows you the amount of sales tax that will be charged, the total of the invoice, any payments that could have already been applied to this, and then the balance due. When you're finished, you'll save and close or save and new. Save and close means you're going to save this one, close the invoices, and you'll see whatever window was underneath. Save and new would close this invoice and you'd be on a blank invoice. I want to hit save and close for a minute because I want to show you how to get back to that invoice or that estimate. Now I could go to each one of these and click the arrow that we talked about at the top and go backwards or forwards, but an easier way is to go to your Customer Center, find your customer and job, and if you don't see the invoice, for example, in this list, it might be because typically this comes up with this fiscal year. And if you notice, I dated the invoice into the next fiscal year. So if you don't see something that you know should be here, check all your filter options right up here. But here's my invoice and my estimate. I can just double click on the invoice to go right back to it or to the estimate if that's what I wanted to do. I can always click on this See History right here, and that's going to actually show me the invoice history. And you can see here the invoice was created. If there had been a payment applied already, you would see that on the next line. And if the money had been deposited, you would see that as well. You would also see if you had emailed this, that's what sent means right up here, but this gives you your entire invoice history. Let's go up to our tabs at the top and start looking through some of these options. Most everything that you will use will be under this main tab, and a lot of these will be familiar because you saw them when we were working on estimates. The first thing I want to mention is this option here that says Find. If you're looking for a particular invoice and you can't find it, you might use these arrows to go backwards or forwards and look through all of your invoices. Remember that everything in QuickBooks is in date order, so what you think might be the next or previous one may not be. You can always use the Find feature if you need to put in some more criteria. You can put in information like the customer and job name, if you have a date range, an invoice number, and a specific amount of money. You've also got an Advanced tab over here. This will actually take you into this option here, which you get to under Edit, Search. And then this will let you put in criteria and do some more advanced searches. I'm going to go ahead and close that for now. If I wanted to create a new invoice, I could click New here. This will be the same thing as if you had come down and clicked on Save and New at the bottom. The next option is Save. I have the option to save this as a regular invoice in QuickBooks or save it as a PDF. And that's always good if you intend to email this to your customer. Here's your delete option. If you want to delete this invoice, you could. You could also just void this. If you want to make sure you had a record of this invoice, you could just void it. Here's where you create a copy. If you need another invoice just like this, but maybe you need to just change one or two things, it keeps you from typing the entire thing in again, so you could create a copy. You could also memorize this. We're going to talk about memorizing in a later module, but let me go ahead and give you an example of why you might memorize an invoice. Let's say you have rental property. You're not actually going to mail invoices to your tenants, but you do need an invoice in QuickBooks so that when you get paid, you have something to apply the money to. You may even want to set it up so that QuickBooks enters this invoice 5 days early. If you've memorized it, then QuickBooks will automatically enter it the way you see it here, and it will change the date for you each month. And that way it's there and you don't have to worry about going and entering all of these manually. You can also mark this as pending. An invoice actually becomes part of your accounts receivable as soon as you save it. It will show up in your profit and loss as income if you're looking at your reports on accrual basis. What if you don't want to delete this, but for some reason you want to put this on hold? You'll be able to do that. If something is marked as pending here, it won't show up in the accounting reports until you go back and mark it again and tell it it's not pending anymore. Here's where you can print this invoice. I want to preview this and show you what it looks like. You can see it says invoice at the top here. It's got your customer and your project. Notice the customer does not see the item. You can see the information at the bottom, the sales tax, the total, if any payments were made, and the balance due. And you can customize this. We'll learn how to do that in a later module, but this is the generic invoice that you get in QuickBooks. I'm going to close this, and we're going to stop the video right here. I want you to go ahead and flip over to video number 7, which is going to be part 2 of invoicing from estimates. Hey there, it's Cindy. Welcome back to QuickBooks 2001. We're talking about invoicing from estimates. We've already gone through part 1. Let's go ahead and finish up here in part 2. Let's head over to QuickBooks and we'll finish this up. When we left off in part 1, we were going through these print options. You know how to preview this, and here's where you'd print the invoice. You can also print the batch. The batch means if you've got print later checked, you could go ahead and set up several invoices, check the box, and when you're ready, you print them all at once. That's called a batch. You can do the same thing with your email over here. If you've got this email later checked, you'll be able to email a batch. Notice you can also print a packing slip, a shipping label, or an envelope. These will do mail merges with Microsoft Word and pull the customer's address onto those items. And the last one is to save this as a PDF. Over here, you can attach a file. And now we see something new. Add time/costs. And let me explain what that is. If you have any expenses you incur that you want to turn around and invoice the customer for at the end of the month, QuickBooks will remember those expenses, and then you can pull them into an invoice by clicking this button here. When you click on Add time/cost, if you have any time set up in QuickBooks related to this customer or job, any expenses, mileage, or items that would be listed here, and you could check them off and click OK, and that would pull them onto this invoice. Now you're probably wondering, how does that information get into this window? Real quick, I'll just show you. If I go back to home, I'll use an expense as an example. An expense could come from a credit card charge, or you could have written a check. I'll just use the enter credit card charge as an example. When you're in any window and it asks you over here who is the customer and the job, if you have filled that in, then there would be a little check mark where it says billable. If that's the case on your transaction, then what will happen is when you go back to your invoices and you click on Add time/cost, it'll automatically show up here under expenses in this case. You can also apply a credit. A credit would be a credit that you've issued for this customer, and maybe it's not applied to anything. You can apply it to this invoice from here. The progress option would show you the progress as far as, does this have an estimate? I invoiced it. Is there a payment? Has that payment been deposited? It's very similar to this option here that says See History. Here you can receive a payment towards this invoice. Now chances are you're not going to be on this screen when you're ready to receive a payment, but you could. You can also create a batch right here, and what that would let you do is you can send one invoice to multiple customers. Maybe you have 3 customers that are going to pitch in and pay this one invoice. You'd be able to do that with this option. And then you have the refund or credit option. This is where you create the credit memo, and then this is where you would apply it over here. The next tab says Formatting. These are where you're going to customize your template for QuickBooks. There's also some customization options here. Here's where you can insert a line. The line you're clicked on, the new one will go above it. You can delete a line or copy a line. And then you have Send/Ship. Now this is a great feature if you ship physical products, because what this allows you to do, these 3 right here, is instead of getting out of QuickBooks, going to the internet, going to the FedEx website, logging in, you can do all of that right from here. You can see right here that if I wanted to ship a package, I would actually just click on Ship FedEx Package. And because I have estimates linked to this invoice, it will always ask me that if I'm trying to leave this invoice. For now, I'll just say yes. And what happens is it's going to take me automatically to FedEx. Here's where I would go ahead and set it up the very first time. I'd have to agree to the terms and conditions, but once it's set up, then I can log into my account and go ahead and ship my items. I'll go ahead and get out of that. These right here have to do with mail merges with Microsoft Word. The last tab has some reports that you might want to run related to customers. You can run some quick reports. You can run a history or transaction journal. But I think you're going to want to look at these, the open balances, meaning anything that's open. And then you have sales by customer detail and average days to pay summary. The main tab is going to have most of the options you're going to use on a regular basis, but be familiar with these other options because you might use them from time to time for different things. That's a quick overview of how you would actually invoice a customer based on estimates. Now that you know how to do that, let's go ahead and flip over to video 8 and we'll just talk about just creating invoices not based on estimates. Hey there, welcome to QuickBooks 2021. My name is Cindy. We're working in Module 4 right now where we're talking about customers and jobs. I want to talk to you in this video about how to create invoices for customers when you don't actually have an estimate to pull from. Not everyone is going to use the estimate feature, and you still need to be able to invoice customers. Let's go ahead and head over to QuickBooks and we'll set up an invoice. If you don't use estimates in your business, then go ahead and start with the Create Invoices icon. Even if your business does not actually send invoices out to customers, for example, people who have rental property, you still want to put the invoices in QuickBooks so that when you are paid, you have something to apply the money to. We're going to go ahead and choose our customer and our job. We'll say it's Christie's Kitchen. And if there are any billable time or cost associated with Christie's Kitchen, then you will see this message pop up. If you'd like to actually pull those costs in, you can use the first option and click OK. Or if you want to exclude all of this, you just choose the second option and click OK. Make sure if you're using the class feature, you pick the correct class. And if you're using different templates, then make sure you have the one you'd like to use here in this field. We've got the date of our invoice. We have our invoice number. Here's our bill to address. Double check your terms and your due date. And the big thing here is you want to go ahead and choose the items that you'd like to put on this invoice. Remember, the items are services or products that you're selling your customer. I'm going to go ahead and choose blueprints. I'll say there's a quantity of 2, and we'll just put these at $500 each. And you can see these are not subject to sales tax. And we'll go ahead and put in one more item here. Let's say that I'd like to pull in a door frame, and I'll just pull in one of those and I'll make that $650. And I can add as many items as I'd like to this invoice. On the bottom left, you're able to put in a customer message if you like. You can also create one if there's not one on the list that you'd like to use. And at the very bottom is a place for you to put a memo. This is just for you to say something about this invoice. The customer will not see that. On the right-hand side, you'll see how much sales tax was calculated, the total of the invoice, if there were any payments applied, and then you'll see the balance that's due. And don't forget, at the top of your invoice, most of the options you'll use will be under the Main tab, and we've gone through all of these already. Don't forget that sometimes you may use some options under the Formatting or some of these other tabs, but most everything is under the Main tab. I'm going to go ahead and save and close at the bottom, and now I've created an invoice for Christie's Kitchen. If I wanted to get back to that invoice, the easiest way to do this is go to your Customer Center, and you can see I still have mine open over here, so I'll just click on it from this side. I'm going to click on Christie Abercrombie, and you can see that I have a lot of different transactions here, so let's narrow it down to the kitchen. And here you'll see the invoice that we just did, and all you have to do is double click if you'd like to go to that invoice. And that's really all there is to creating invoices in QuickBooks.
This video is part of our full QuickBooks 2021 course. Take a look at the course by clicking right over there. If you're not a subscriber, go ahead and click down below to subscribe so you get notified about similar videos we upload. And to see more QuickBooks Pro 2020 videos, go ahead and click over there.